What is up, my friends? We are back with episode number 4 of the Anfield Agenda podcast. And once again, we've had to make a little bit of a substitution. As you can see, my brother in baldness, Steve, is still with us. But we have a little bit less hair on the show, Steve, than we would normally have with Conor substituting in, despite trying to spike up his hair as much as he could. Conor, thank you for stepping in, my man, and joining
Not
us.
quite the same, is it?
No, it needs to
It's
have
not.
a little spike or something, a little quiff or something going on, yeah.
He also promised us, Steve, 50% more optimism to make up for Chris.
Well, I think Chris is a pretty optimistic fella, isn't he? Like,
That's what I mean. I have to up my optimism to reach Chris's levels.
I'm with you. Right? Okay, how's that going to go?
We'll see how it goes.
Well, I've got a test for you both right at the very start of the pod, gents. And Steve, I'll come straight to you on it. Speaking of optimism, is it possible that we may see Alexander Isak get minutes at Turf Moor at the weekend, Steve?
I would say it's entirely possible.
You get me excited now. You get me excited, Steve.
I would say not many minutes. And you know, if he held him back for the one the week after, wouldn't be too bad either, would it? But he's, we're talking about a guy who's not played, very much, if any, football for quite a lot of months now. And we know how massively taxing the Premier League is in terms of physicality. And if you're not right up to speed, you're not, bang on it physically, you can get found out. That's how injuries happen, isn't it? So, they'll be monitoring all his numbers and all of his physicality and all his markers and stuff. But that said, what a thing to have to chuck on with 20 minutes to go, 50 minutes to go if it isn't going your way, or even if it is going your way, just to show off, your new toy and get him going, because it's going to be, I think I said a few weeks back on this that, I was maybe like a little bit underwhelmed by spending so much money on him. I've completely parked that, and I'm fully on the bus now, and I'm excited to see him in a red shirt or a white shirt, depending on what we see at Turf Moor.
Well, speaking of white shirts, Conor, as the proud owner of an Isak 9 away shirt, sir, how are you feeling about the possibility of him getting some minutes off the bench? You sent me just before we went live tonight the Swedish team, and he was on the bench for Sweden. So maybe we do see a few minutes of Burnley. What are you saying?
Yeah, I'd say tonight might give us a good indication if he does get a few minutes for Sweden. I'd say he gets something similar with us. Like Steve said, I can't imagine he'll get more than a few minutes, but it'd be nice to get him for at least 5 or 10 minutes, give him a run out, and then maybe start to play him a little bit more as the weeks go on. But I couldn't see him starting soon. But yeah, I'm just so excited. Like I said, I got the Isak 9 shirt. It's the first shirt in God knows how many years I've got a name on. I just had to do it. Just so excited to see him play.
It's brilliant. I don't blame you one bit. Steve, I want to move on in a minute to talk about when he might start for us, but something hit me last night. I was sitting here looking at the international fixtures, and I went forward to the last group of games, which is always the South American ones. So we have, we used to have Darwin with Uruguay, Colombia for Diaz. And now all that we have is the Argentinian and Brazilian boys. And I thought we talked about refreshing the forward line, but this is another benefit that we haven't really discussed much. We don't have 2 more guys coming late back now. Our 2 strikers are European and thus less travelling.
Yeah, that's a good shout. That's a really good shout, because that's been a bit of an issue, hasn't it, over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, them coming back late and maybe only been good enough for half an hour or 45 minutes or something on their return. So yeah, I hadn't considered that at all. In my disappointment at selling those 2, I'm gonna put that in the silver lining of the cloud that is selling those 2 category. Because we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about transfers. But I'm self-confessed Darwin fan, so but that is definitely a thing. That is definitely a thing. I think internationally as well. Katike played his first game for France the other day as well, so he's getting the experience he deserves, because obviously he's been fantastic for us in the first couple of games.
He's been brilliant, and it just hit me the other night. I was thinking here going, right, well, we get the guys coming back late, and everybody else finishes up kind of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but these guys play really late into Wednesday, and then by the time they travel back, they have very little time. So often after these international breaks, as Steve said, Conor, we don't really utilize a lot of the South American players all the time because they were tired from traveling.
Yeah, like it's a full extra day of rest or training, whatever way you want to look at it, which is huge. I know, like all managers talk about, but Klopp in particular, before he used to always talk about how important training was. He said if he could train 24 hours a day, he would. So I know having the lads back fresh and training for an extra day will be a huge benefit. And like we said earlier as well, like even if Salah moves on next couple of years and a league side comes in, that's another one who's not off international duty doing AFCON and stuff like that. So even less travel and less time off. So I think there's definitely a trend here of players coming in just to make the squad more, I suppose, more sustainable for the season. Like if players aren't traveling as much, aren't injured as much as well. So yeah, it's all coming together nicely.
To bring it back to Isak, Steve, I've always thought that once we'd signed him, and again, thankfully we did, it was probably going to be the other side of the October international break before you can really start to see him as a starter, or even to get 60 minutes from the start. I think that's where my head's at with it.
What date would that be then? Where are we looking at?
The first game back would be the United game on the 19th of October.
I would be very surprised if he's not started a game before then. I mean,
we've 7 games in between then.
We promised you 60% or 50% more optimism, folks, and we weren't messing.
I think we'll definitely see him start a game before then. I'm going to put my house on. I'm going to put my house on it, but I'm sure we'll see him start a game before then. This is, I sort of go back a little bit on what I said in my first answer. Yeah, it takes a little while to get these boys up to speed, but it's not like he's been setting his backside for the whole summer. We saw him training at in Spain, didn't we, at Sociedad for a while. He's obviously been away with Sweden now, and like Conor says, if he gets some minutes for them, that would be a good indicator as to kind of where he's at. But yeah, I mean, I think 2 or 3 weeks, good training with us, I think he'll be good to go. I reckon.
I hope you're right, Steve. I very much do, because the sooner the better. We have these options available from the bench, and it's it'd be an interesting one. It's hard to know, I guess, because we haven't really been able to gauge the level of fitness he's at. When he was away with Sociedad, we over in their camp, we didn't really see how hard he was working, what he was doing at Newcastle. But there is still another international break as well before that game, so that'll be more time for him to meet up with John Dahl Thomas and the Swedish team, and maybe even get more minutes into the leg. So I like it. We're delivering on the optimism front now. Conor, the next question I have for you, remembering the optimism here, sir, is how big of a difference maker is he going to be? Because me and Steve kind of lied to ourselves and said, if we get him, great, but if we don't get him, we'll be okay. Now that we've got him, we're both fully admitting we're hypocrites, liars, and we're on board. So how much of a difference maker is Alexander Isak going to be in these pivotal moments? Because yes, we know we'll be okay for most of our games, but I'm talking your Real Madrid, your knockout stages of the Champions League. Is that signing potentially the thing that catapults us into maybe challenging on all fronts?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing, like, we're not going to struggle to score goals without him, but in games where we need that one clinical moment towards the end, let's say a Champions League tie or a final, he is the difference maker. Like we've seen with Salah and other players over the years, just like that player who can step up when it's really needed. He's the one who will get that goal. And I've heard like Newcastle fans talking about him, saying like he is a big game player for them as well. Like we've seen it against us last year, obviously, in the Carabao Cup final. So I think game to game, generally, I don't think it's going to be a huge difference as much as like Ekitike and Salah are going to score plenty anyway. But in those clinical moments, in those big games, he will be a huge difference maker, I think.
And Steve, have you given much thought to how exactly Arna's going to utilise both Ekitike and Isak? I mean, on streams that we've been doing at night, we've had people maybe thinking we go to that 4-2-2-2 that we'd seen previously. Will we maybe see Ugo Ekitike drift across to the left-hand side? I mean, first world problems, good problems, but still problems nonetheless.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, really good problems to have. I'll be honest, I don't know. I've been kind of thinking about this. You see a few pieces in various newspapers of how Liverpool could line up, and you're seeing the 4-2-2-2, but then you're completely changing Mo Salah's role, aren't you? You're completely changing the position he starts. We've seen the last kind of season or so under the new manager that he's been really hugging that touchline, the right hand side. He isn't a number 10, so I see it as a bit of a an odd one if you're going to try and kind of pull him inside a little bit. I think more likely for me is either Ekitike starting wide left or working out a way to play 2 up top and playing Wirtz a little bit further to the left.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We said this last week, didn't we? That Gakpo's had a really good start to the season as well. So if you're sitting there, Cody Gakpo, you know, he lives half a mile from me. If you're sitting there in his house there now, thinking, you know, I don't deserve to lose my place. You know, he's got a pretty good shout at the moment to be one of the first names on the team sheet.
New deal
I guess
as well,
that, you know,
Steve.
really good issue to have, isn't it? Really good problem to have. But it gives you options, loads of options.
Or a new contract, sorry, for Cody as well.
Exactly, yeah. But it gives you loads of options, doesn't it? Loads of possibilities. And if everyone's on board, if you know, I heard Ekitike say in an interview, was it earlier today or yesterday? You know, he's happy with competition. He wants good players at the club. He wants to learn off good players, and you want that, don't you? Because that's like all the best teams, the best, you know, squads and setups over the last 10, 15, 20, whatever years have all had competition for places. And I think as long as everybody's on board that you might not play all 50 or 60 games, you might have to rotate a little bit. You might have to kind of be a horses for courses situation. You might, you know, if you're just carrying a knock, or you might, you know, someone else might come in and score a hat trick, and then you have to wait for a few games before coming back in. If everyone's on board with that, you know, that kind of mantra and that kind of way of thinking, you know, I think it's all good.
So kind of just as Steve was speaking here, my mind was ticking over, and he was talking about everybody not maybe playing the 50, 60 games. Does that apply to Mohamed Salah as well in your eyes, Conor? Because we've had a start to the season that is understandable to some extent because of everything that the team has been through. So I'm certainly not thinking this is any sign that Mohamed Salah's fallen off a cliff form-wise or anything, but we haven't seen the best of him so far yet. So do we think we're going to have a situation this year where Arner can feel, well, maybe I can take him off with 30 to go, or maybe I can give him a rest and rotate?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing, whether he'll be happy with that is a big thing. Like, we know he doesn't come off too often, but I think, like, I don't think players are built to play 50 or 60 games, in all honesty. Like, you'll even hear them say that themselves, there's already too many games. So I can't imagine he's going to be too upset by missing a few games here and there. If at least if we have the options, if we have like a new system, I'd say, with 2 strikers up front, maybe that allows a Frimpong or someone to kind of play a bit more of a right mid rather than right wing role. Like, there's so many options in that squad now, which I think will help hugely. And even like if Salah can get a break every now and again, that should keep him fitter for the rest of the season. Like, we always see he drops off towards the end of the season usually. So with the other options around, maybe a little bit less pressure on him, with Isak and Ekitike scoring goals as well, maybe we could see a bit more of a fresher Salah towards the end of the season, hopefully, with those other options.
And for you, Steve, do you think there is now, maybe for the first time in his career at Liverpool, the question about Mohamed Salah playing every game? You know, whether it be because of the strike force that we've just put together, or whether it be because, you know, Father Time is undefeated. Do you think we might see him used more sparingly on occasion?
No.
I think that's the right answer.
I just don't, because I think, you know, he is pretty indestructible, isn't he? Like, you know, the guy's built like a machine, and he's as fit as a fiddle. He seems as fit as a fiddle. His performances, yeah, maybe not, you know, the first a couple of games, maybe not like where he wanted to be, but yeah, I still think he's the first name on the team sheet. He's the most reluctant person to be substituted. He absolutely wouldn't take well being rested. I think we've got another couple of years of Mo Salah, and we're going to see, you know, as much of him as we possibly can. I just think this is what kind of makes me think about this. As I was saying before about the formation kind of change, I don't see anything changing that you know, changes where he starts. That's his position. That's a kind of non-negotiable.
So I was thinking about the transfer window, Conor, and I was wondering, you know, let's have some final thoughts on this one. The first thing that popped into my mind was, have you any seller's remorse about any player that Liverpool have moved on this summer? Do you think there was whether it be an incorrect decision maybe from the club, or whether it be just your opinion and somebody we shouldn't have sold? Do you have any seller's remorse?
Not remorse as such, but I think I would have kept Luis Diaz if possible, but I think with that level of money being offered and the fact that he seemed to want to go, I'm happy that he did go in a way. But in a I'm distracted by Steve now. In an ideal world, obviously, like I would have liked to keep Diaz, or like not to say I wanted to keep Darwin, but it wouldn't be the worst option just to have another forward around. So I think just around the numbers of forwards we have at the club, more so remorse than anything, but no specifics that I would have changed really, unless the money wasn't there for Diaz.
So for yourself, Steve, Diaz was probably the most questionable deal from fans' perspective because obviously he was still performing at a high level, but it was a good deal financially, and Liverpool seemingly didn't want to give him a bumper new contract. So any seller's remorse for you?
Yeah, Diaz is the one. Was it a great deal financially? I don't know.
69 million.
Yeah, I don't know. A guy at the peak of his powers, a massive part of winning the winning the league last year. Yeah, I'm not convinced it was. I'm not convinced it was. A great deal for us. As I said before, Darwin is I was absolutely convinced that Darwin was going to work. I was just absolutely nailed on that he was going to work, and I was so wishing it was going to work. Then you see him now playing these games, Sunday league level, almost like the crowds and stuff. I've played in front of more people than what some score a goal a day in front of 30 people. It looked like it just makes me really sad.
Do you reckon there's a buyback for Darwin?
What's that?
Do you reckon there's a buyback clause for Darwin? It seems to be one, but
there's no buyback clause. The Harvey Elliott one is maybe a seller's remorse kind of situation as well, but obviously you're covered a bit by the buyback clause, aren't you? So yeah, I can make a peace with that one.
So for me, it's not really seller's remorse, but I do think we probably could have got more money for Caoimhín Kelleher. I know we had a year to go on his deal, but if you're looking at some of the prices goalkeepers are gone for, even ones who aren't really established, one, shocked that we didn't have more clubs banging down our door to try and sign him, because I think you look at Newcastle situation there, bringing in a goalkeeper on loan who's just nowhere near as good as Kelleher, in my opinion. And Ramsdale, you've seen Arsenal paying $5 million to bring in Kepa. It's probably a good deal for a backup keeper of that standard. But for me, I just think the money we got for Kelleher maybe could have got a little bit more. But to flip that on its head, Conor, is there one signing that you think Liverpool may have overpaid for? Now, it doesn't mean you don't think he'll be a success or not, but do you think one of the signings in particular this summer you found a little bit too pricey?
Not particularly. If there was, then it's very little amount overpaid. I feel like Florian Wirtz, obviously breaking the transfer record when we brought him in, it should be good money. You see the quality he has. Isak again, we're quoting 200 million for him at one point, so to get him for 125 isn't a bad deal. Kirkes for 40 million odds, it's not. I don't know, in terms of fullbacks, should be spending that kind of money on fullbacks, but then he is so young and he's Premier League proven, so it's not a bad deal either. Maybe Ekitike, maybe 5 or 10 million too much, but by no means have we been absolutely shafted by any of these deals, I don't think.
No,
so for me, Steve, it brings us back to our friend Alexander Isak, because I can't lie, I don't see him as a £130 million footballer. I never have. I thought the whole market was inflated, and I really think his market value is probably somewhere between 90 and 100. But it was a seller's market for forwards in this window. So that's the one for me I think maybe we've overpaid on.
But it's a similar situation. Do you remember when he signed Virgil for 75 million and everybody thought that was crazy money at the time? But he was the one that the club said, that's the guy we want. And you go out and you pay whatever it takes to get them, and completely vindicated in that case. And I hope the same thing will apply here, that it feels like a lot now. But 2 or 3 years down the line, maybe it won't. I'm with you, with you and Conor. I think I don't feel like we've been particularly shafted by anyone. I don't feel like we've overpaid. Obviously, buyout clause on Frimpong probably saved 20 or 30 mil. Kirkes, Bournemouth, I guess, could have charged us a bit more. He's one of the best young players in the country, one of the best young players in the world, probably, in his position, certainly. So, yeah, I think maybe underpaid. a little for him. He may be on the edge of overpay for Ekitike, but again, we don't really know, do we? Like, he's played, 3 or 4 games, and he's looked good. So, yeah, who knows? I'm fairly happy with the prices we paid for everyone, I think.
So let's flip it, Conor, and go the other direction. Do you think we got a bargain for anybody this summer? Is there somebody you looked at and thought, well, that's a great fee? As an example, I suppose Frimpong, knowing the release clause was there, he's certainly undervalued at what we paid for him.
I was about to say Frimpong. Yeah, I feel like Frimpong's one of those ones. If he was 50 or 60 million, do you reckon we would have went for him, or was it just this lad is so good and he's up for grabs for cheap, so it's a no-brainer to go get him? I think outside of that, I think everyone else is fairly decently priced. In fairness, I think Frimpong's definitely the bargain of the summer in that regard.
For yourself, Steve?
Definitely agree. I wonder. I mean, but release clauses have been good for us over the past few years, haven't they? Soboslai, McAllister, I think, had one as well, and a few other boys. I think about Haaland at City. That's a £150 million player, and his release clause was like 55 million or something daft, wasn't it? So it's but I think they work both ways, don't they? Because a club, clubs like obviously City bought Haaland from Dortmund, they probably wouldn't have signed him unless he'd got the release clause he wanted. I'm sure same for some of the guys like Frimpong. Probably wouldn't have committed to Leverkusen for so long unless he had that release clause. So they do kind of work, work all round. I'm glad I don't think we've got anybody with a silly release clause in, have we? None spring to mind.
No, not that I'm aware of.
None that I've read about. You wouldn't be desperate for a release clause to leave Liverpool, would you? It's normally players you feel like they're at a bit of a stepping stone club.
The one that has me intrigued fee-wise is Mamadashvili, because this could turn out to be a bargain. I won't say it'll turn out to be overpaying, but it certainly intrigues me because what was it, about 25 million for him? If he works out long-term to be Alisson's successor, Steve, that could look like an absolute bargain.
That could be an absolute steal. That's a really good shout, actually. I'd kind of parked him as one of last year's signings, but no, he could be an absolute bargain because we haven't seen much of him, have we? To be fair, but by all accounts, he's fantastic. He's certainly a big old unit, isn't he? And as long as he's happy to just bide his time for a year or two, because I don't get the impression that Alisson is going anywhere anytime soon. So again, great position to be in terms of keepers. We compare it to same about centre forwards and stuff. As long as they're on board, as long as I'm sure you don't come to a club like Liverpool with a keeper like Alisson and think you're going to walk straight in. So I'm sure they've had that conversation. I'm sure they're going to be well across kind of that situation. But you're right. Like, he could be in a couple of years when Alisson moves back to Brazil, goes to Saudi, whatever he chooses to do. He's only a young boy, isn't he, Mamadashvili? Only 23, 24?
24, I think.
Yeah, he's only a baby still. So he's got, 10 years left at the top, hasn't he, potentially?
So I wanted to just move on to speak about the academy in a moment. Before I do, Conor and Steve, your most impressive non-Liverpool signing of this transfer window. Now, whether that be good value or just something you think will make a huge difference to a team that they've joined. Is there any that sticks out? I'll come to Steve first because I'm kind of shafting Conor on this because he's a late substitute. So I'll give him a minute to think.
I think Jack Grealish at Everton is going to be a really, really, really good one. Really good one. Good for Everton. Good for him. Like, just a win-win all round. I think I don't know what's happened at City, but I've always liked Jack Grealish. I think you see him playing for Everton with a big smile on his face. The crowd are going to absolutely love him. Walking into that new stadium, playing the way that he does. If Moyes gives him plenty of freedom, I think he'll be fantastic. I think if I one more, Cherky at City could be a massive bargain as well. That's another release clause, isn't it? And I mean, he could be an absolute steal at 35 million or whatever he cost.
He could be. I'll give Conor another second to think, because I'm going to put in a bit of an odd show, somebody we haven't really seen too much, and that's Simas, the young striker, the young Greek guy that came into Brighton. I remember looking at him when he was at Olympiacos and some of the numbers and performances he was putting in at such a young age. And we know if there's one thing Brighton are good at, it is finding and unearthing cheap gems who they then flog for an absolute fortune.
Yeah, somebody's paying 150 million for him in a couple of years, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Let's just pay it now and just get it over with.
That's the one for me that I looked at and thought was quite interesting. So what about yourself, Conor?
Could be a bit of an obvious one, but I think Joe Pedro at Chelsea is a big one. Like, I think he's a severely underrated player. Like, you can see from my FPL team last few weeks, he's been smashing it already. So I think he's a good business. I was looking through Arsenal's business, and like, they're all good, decent signings, but they're all just players that they don't really need. Like, how many centre backs do they realistically need, or how many centre defensive mids? Like, Gyökeres, I don't think is going to be a good signing at all, to be honest. I'm a bit intrigued to see how Madueke does, but overall, I think I'll go Joe Pedro is probably the most impressive piece of business.
I think with Arsenal signings is, I don't think, maybe other than Zubimendi, I don't think any of them have really made their first 11 better. They're all kind of like
squad, but then this is like they already have enough defenders. Like, they're all squad signings, aren't they? They're all just to give more depth in a lot of positions. I'm sure they will. Madueke looked good against us, didn't he, the other day? But he's not going to get Bukayo Saka out that team, is he? And
Eze might be.
Eze's the only one. I like him a lot. I think I'd have happily taken him at Liverpool if we'd have fancied one more on a deadline day. I think he's a really, really, really good player.
So also this week, gents, we've seen the owners announce that they're going to make a £20 million investment into the academy at Kirby, the first one since it's been open, and very impressive sounding, an indoor dome, a seated pitch with 500 spectators available to watch. And it kind of got me thinking, Steve, one, well done, absolutely fantastic from the ownership to invest in the academy, which is certainly bringing through some good players. So I just wanted to say well done to them on that, but also ask you, has PSR maybe now recalculated ownership minds on bringing through youth players? Because we know they're all profit if they come to the academy and they're sold. So is this one of the potential upsides of PSR, that the academies are being supercharged?
Massively. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because academies in the past were probably focused on only the players who would make it at your club. So we're only really looking at, we're only really going to put the effort, put the time into players who are going to make it in our first team. Whereas now, if you can bring through 10 lads who are all going to play Premier League football, one might make it into our first team, and 9 of them might get between 10 and 30 million for, to absolutely supercharge your PSR, give you loads and loads of money in the bank and loads of headroom on PSR. So it definitely changed, I imagine. We've seen Chelsea bring in 300 odd million this summer. A lot of it was boys have been sat in their academy, you're doing nothing, out on loan at various clubs, and all of a sudden they're flogging them for loads of money. And we've done it a bit with Kelleher and Ben Doak as well, guys like that who we paid next to nothing for. So I definitely think it will have changed approaches, though much more mindful of lads who probably they know aren't going to make it at Liverpool, but can we get a few through as well that are going to give us 20 mil?
Would be nice. And we'd seen a very interesting stat from the Athletic, and I think it was James Pearce, to say that 18% of the minutes played in Liverpool's title-winning season last year came from academy products, which is the highest in the league. I think Manchester United were second, Chelsea may be third, which is again another good example of why the academy is getting that investment from the owners. And it got me thinking a little bit, Conor, with this one. Is this why so many clubs now are going to the multi-club model? Because like Steve just mentioned there, if you've got a player that you bring into your club, you can send them out on loan then to a Strasbourg in Chelsea's case. And even if they don't come back to Chelsea in the longer term, they have got first team experience in the senior league, and then money time when you sell them.
100%, yeah. I think you read my mind there. That's exactly the point I was going to make. Like, we've seen the club are looking for feeder clubs, let's say, or kind of this multi-tier club system for the last couple of years. And like you said, we will just send these lads out, kind of fatten the goose or whatever, and then sell them on. So it's like, get them minutes, get them experience. Like, we've seen even like say like Tyler Morton as a player just sitting on Liverpool's bench, the quality he has to then go to Leon, like just being a Liverpool player just adds value to a player already. So if you can get through, like Steve said, 10 half decent young fellas, you're getting at least 10 million for all of them. That helps PSR. It ties in nicely with this whole multi-club system that the football's going down. So I think that long-term vision will definitely feed into that.
I want to go back on my seller's remorse answer and bring up Tyler Morton because he looked. I've always really, really, really liked him, and we didn't get loads of money for him. I hope there's a buyback clause on him because it wouldn't surprise me at all if we're bringing him back in a couple of years. Because I've always liked. I like midfielders who play the way that he does. Really good on the ball, really composed, loads of time, good awareness, good passing. Yeah, I like him a lot.
So my own thought process on this one before we finish up was, I think Ben Doak's a great example of this. 600 grand from Celtic, never really played too much senior football for Liverpool, had some loans at Borough and the likes of that, and 25 million quid to Bournemouth. I mean, that is tremendous business, whatever way you dress it up, Steve. Bring him in for 600 grand, loan him out, and then sell him for 25 million.
It's mega. I mean, it's what Michael Edwards does, isn't it? Like, he just turns... I was going to make some analogy about turning like rubbish into gold, and that's not right because you're not turning. You clearly see potential in these lads. They're clearly really, really, really good players, but getting a good return off lads that we probably know aren't going to be first team regulars for us. We're talking about lads who Ben Doak, loads of potential. I hope he does great at Bournemouth. From what I've seen, probably not quite there for us. But yeah, great bit of business to get him, get 25 million for him. And yeah, probably Kelleher might have been a bit underpriced, but then he's kind of balanced off by the ones that we get, perhaps double what you'd expect for. So yeah, I think decent all round in terms of sales.
Well, the bad news, ladies and gentlemen, is time has beaten us. The clock has beaten us. But the good news is I feel we delivered on the extra 50% optimism Conor promised at the start. And also, the Reds are back this weekend against Burnley. So myself, Chris and Steve will be back next week to talk about that game, find out whether Isak got those minutes from the bench or not, and hopefully discuss another Liverpool victory. Thank you so much, as always, to Steve. Thank you to Conor for coming in as a late substitute and delivering the 50% optimism. Who needs Chris Stonage and his overdone jelly hair? Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in. And we'll see you guys next week. Much love. Bye-bye.